Welcome to the Times of Industry show. I want to get right into this today because I have an important guest with me. I have Gerald Celente, Mr. Trends himself. Gerald is no stranger to no one in the investment business. Gerald, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on.
I think this will be an important interview for anyone listening to this. We're recording this on March 21st, 2017. First of all, I want to start with asking you, how did you get started with trends, forecasting?
Oh, actually, at a graduate school many years ago, I was the number 2 guy running a mayoral campaign in Yonkers, New York. And I was so good at it that I started working on all the campaigns in the area in Westchester County and some parts of New York City. And they sent me up to Albany, and I was the assistant to the secretary of the New York State Senate as a young guy. And then from there, I designed and instructed American politics and campaign technology and taught it at St. John's University. And I landed a job as a chief government affairs specialist for the chemical industry. And I was living between Chicago and Washington, D.C. And again, I'm a young guy, and I hit the top of this really fast. I was staying at the Willett Hotel, putting my meetings on at the Hay Adams, and working with the top people in D.C. And what happened was, by the late 70s, I started not liking what I was doing. I was a very young, ambitious guy, and I wasn't really concerned about what I was doing. It's just I really wanted to just hit the top and make a lot of dough. So what happened was the Iranian crisis starts heating up. And I'd been reading about, how the United States, the CIA, and the MI6 out of the UK overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953. I was very hip to all of this and how, the Savak, the secret police, was so hated, and the Shah of Iran, the top of the peacock throne in this world and the many beyond, and all this BS, This guy, the CIA dragged him out of southern France after they overthrew Mossadegh and plopped him in there. And what Mossadegh did, his crime was that he had the nerve to nationalize Iranian oil. In those days, it was Anglo-Iranian, better known today as BP, and Standard Oil, better known today as ExxonMobil, that controlled the country and controlled the oil. So when he nationalized it, they had no time for that. So when the revolution started in the late 1970s against the Shah, and I'm watching this thing unfold, I said, no, this thing is real, man. There are millions of people out in the street. This thing's going down. Jimmy Carter visits the Shah. He and Rosalind on New Year's Eve, spends New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife, comes back to the States. I'll never forget it. And in those days, it was a big deal when the president went overseas. And, he salutes the guys as he steps out of the helicopter, goes up to the microphones and announces to the American people that the Shah is the island of stability in the Middle East. At that moment, I became a political atheist. I'd been around long enough in government. I had pictures of me and Ronald Reagan, this one, that one. I'd been around. And there's a saying we used to have growing up in the Bronx: bullshit has its own sound. And when Carter spoke that words, it was bullshit. I knew this thing was coming down. So at that moment, I became a political atheist. I no longer believed in the crap that these little jerks were shooting out of their mouths. And the second thing I said, what will be the implications? And remember, I'm a young guy now. I'm about 30 years old. And I started investing very heavily in gold and oil futures, knowing that both of them would go up as this situation escalated. And you got to realize, back then, nobody's doing this. Very few people. It was hard for me to find a broker to deal with. I didn't know what I was doing. The brokers didn't know what they were doing, trying to put me in contact with other people. I ended up making enough money to leave my job. And I realized that current events form future trends. But people can't see what's going on because they're wrapped up in the ideology and their belief systems. So that's how I began the Trends Research Institute. And I started with geopolitics and economics, and then realizing that all things are connected. Whereas Chief Seattle is alleged to have said, all things are connected, like the blood which unites us all. So I started looking beyond economics and politics, looking at environment, changes in the family, food. I coined the term clean food in 1993. I used to be a keynote speaker around the world. I talked about the bottled water industry in 1986, when no one was really talking about this at all. And this year in America, people are drinking more bottled water now than soda pop. So I began to look beyond just the realm of my business and personal interests into seeing what's going on. I say opportunity misses those who view the world through the eyes of their profession. So that's how I began it.
Gerald, that's very, very interesting. And what I want to talk about now is, well, obviously the fact that you were asking what are the implications when the Iranian crisis happened, that's probably that passion that you have into thinking about the future. And I want to ask you about a very important trend that's going on right now, but it will be much larger in the future. I want to talk to you about something that you call the reefer money madness, and this is the legal marijuana industry. How do you see this playing out? I just had an interview with Representative Roger Goodman, who legislates the law and the marijuana laws in Washington State, and he's going out helping legislators nationwide. What do you see happening here, and how early is this?
Well, it's as early as when they repealed prohibition in 1933 in states. It's all about the bottom line. And the bottom line is money. And states need the dough. Again, I mentioned I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. I remember when they made lotto legal. Before that, they used to have a thing called playing the numbers. Like when I was a kid growing up, you used to guess, the older people, I was only a kid, what the last three numbers were, the attendance at Aqueduct Raceway. And the numbers runners, the mafia, these guys, whether it was the vegetable man selling the numbers, the guys at the candy store, wherever it might be. Whoever guessed the last three numbers won. But it was against the law, and there was this thing in those days. You had the Irish cops and the Italians on the other side, and it was the DAs are always Irish. And I remember as a kid, oh, it's terrible. People are only spending a quarter or a dollar, but they're the people that could afford it the least, and these gangsters are ripping them off, and we can't have that. So they throw some poor SOB in jail for running the numbers. But then the slimy politicians, these little low-life boys and girls, decide they got to make money off this, so now you got to be in it to win it. Let's legalize it so we can reap all of the profits. They're greedy little SOBs. I can't stand politicians. I was there firsthand. I know what a low life looks like, man. And most people that become politicians are the same people you hated in high school and college that wanted to be class president and head of the student council. So now they legalize lotto. They legalize gambling because they need the money. You need the money so these little people who never worked a day in their life could live like the royalty. That's the bottom of the bottom line, because these are the bottom of the cesspool suckers. So they're doing the same thing with marijuana. They only made marijuana illegal when they made booze legal. It was competition. This damn thing's been around a lot longer than officials. I mean, if you could feed the planet, could you heal the planet? With all the medical benefits of marijuana, and out of Israel and Spain, and now they're legalizing it in there too. And they're leading in marijuana medical research. Marijuana is going to continue to grow because of the bottom line. California, $7 billion alone they're looking at in revenues. More tax revenue out of Colorado, which is on the leading edge, than on tax revenue from booze. And then again, look at the medical benefits. The two interest groups that are going to try to stop this from happening are alcohol and big pharma, because that's what it's eroding into. Because they are losing profits from the people that are going in different directions. So that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at this to be a major trend, and it's not going to go away.
Gerald, I wanted to ask you then how this marijuana trend is going to affect the jobs market and crime rates, and possibly if you see anything that has to do with education for the youth. Do you think this is a positive influence or bad influence? You know, there's always that forbidden fruit type mentality. Do you think this is just going to erode that, or, you know, what do you see happening here with regards to marijuana?
Well, there's of course, you know, I mean, you know, it's no good when you're a kid to get high. I mean, you know, your brain's still developing, you know. So on that aspect, you know, there are negatives, and there are people that, you know, live by it and don't, you know. I mean, any too much of anything isn't a good thing. So there are definitely those aspects of it that need to be regulated. And of course, you know, it's going to be difficult, but there's no stopping it. If the government tries to stop it, you get all you want anytime. The war on drugs was a total failure. But then you got this guy in here that people are worried about, this new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who's equated marijuana with heroin. This guy, this is a quote by this guy's a jerk. People should go up to him and say, you're a jerk. How can you be Attorney General? You should be president, because that's how stupid you are, and you just could follow in the line with other morons that have been president. He said, quote, I reject the idea that America will be a better place if marijuana is sold in every corner store. And I'm astonished to hear people suggest that we can solve our heroin crisis by legalizing marijuana so people can trade, you ready for this? One life-wrecking dependency for another that's only slightly less awful. Slightly less awful? You jerk, you stupid moron, you imbecile. Hey, he's the Attorney General. Be a good boy and girl, bow down and salute him. This guy should be ripped to shreds for making a comparison by saying that getting high on a little pot is as life-wrecking as getting wasted on heroin. That's the morons that got in charge. And not only as Attorney General, this has been going on all my life in every government institution. EPA, FDA, the military, one after another. Guys with bad attitudes and the brains as small as Sessions.
Very interesting. Gerald, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the Trump presidency. Since the elections, the middle-class America has been nothing but optimistic on what's going to happen. America is spending again. People are going to the stores. People buying online. The stock market is booming. This is euphoria. And a few days ago, the debt ceiling holiday has expired now. To raise the debt ceiling, you need to confront that beast all over again. At a $4,000 burn rate per second, the United States government would be broke by about June 1st. what do you see going on with the Trump administration? And let me clarify my question. Do you think it is possible to cut taxes, raise the debt ceiling, and move forward with the infrastructure plan while you have to feed 42 million people on food stamps and you've got 80 million boomers retiring depending on entitlements? What will have to give here? Because the Chinese and the Japanese are not buying these 30-year bonds anymore. They're buying 2-year bonds, if anything. And this is a huge shift in the American economy right now that's going on. How is this going to play out?
Well, the market went up for 3 reasons. And one is that he's going to cut taxes, 2, deregulate, and 3, build the infrastructure. So let's take each one of them. All he's talking are words. There's no action. And again, we forecast in the Trends Journal, it's in black and white, in May of 2016, we picked him as a winner. So I'm a political atheist. We look at things for the way they are, not the way we want them to be. So it's not I like Trump, dislike Trump. It's what it is. It's the presidential reality show. And when you said middle-class America supports him, that's who watches the reality show. Watch him. I watched him last night. No, excuse me, I watched him a couple of nights ago. And he was in Kentucky. It was a reality show. You're talking to a rally. It's a performance. So you're talking about the debt. The debt doubled under Obama. He's going to bring tax cuts. Can he boost the economy? I believe he is more positive for the economy than any of the other recent candidates. And primarily because he's a bottom line guy and he has a lot of smart people around him, whether, again, you like the people or not. So let's talk about trade. You have to build things at home if you want to build your economy. Again, I'm old enough to remember when people had middle-class lifestyles having middle-class jobs. If you don't make it here and you make it somewhere else, bring it back here, mark it up so the multinationals can make the dough, you're not going to have much of an economy. Of the 10 million jobs that were created under Obama that he bragged about, according to the Harvard-Princeton study, 80% of them, 94% of them were temporary jobs. So now you just had a G20 meeting and you had Mnuchin there, and you know, they said, you know, in all the reports, whether Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, any of them, that, you know, Mnuchin was very respected and respectable. And he said, no, we just can't keep going on like this where you get all the great deals. So you're already seeing, you mentioned about people spending more. Optimism counts, but he has to produce at some level. So when we talk about the infrastructure, what is he talking? $1 trillion over 10 years? Obama had $800 billion over 10 years. That's chump change in a $4 trillion budget each year. So what are we talking, $100 billion? And he's going to increase the military by $54 billion. So it's not a lot of money. But if he raises the employment numbers with good jobs, if he cuts taxes significantly among the middle class, it's going to be a positive for the nation, and if he leaves jobs in the country rather than them leaving. Yeah, I mentioned, you asked me how I got started, and I told you I started buying gold in the 70s. Do you know why gold prices used to go up in the 70s? The headline news, and you got to go back now when nobody was talking about gold. Very rare. It used to go up when our trade deficit used to go up. The trade deficit just started inching up in those days. And it was big news. Now you got what, a $600 billion trade deficit? So Trump's policies on the surface make sense. And again, I changed my forecasts by saying that we would not have the crash that I was anticipating when Trump got elected. 5 days after he got elected, I did a 180 on gold and the economy. I'm still bullish on gold as a safe haven asset. And there are geopolitical concerns that keep building. However, on the economy, yeah, there's going to be a correction in the market. No, he added $3 trillion in value. Of course there's going to be a correction, but I don't see a crash at this time.
Very interesting. You know, the Americans have started to dumb down on their silver and gold investments, but the Asians are absolutely, the retail crowd and citizens there are absolutely buying gold hand over fist because they don't like these swift changes that the U.S. is proposing. I want to switch gears with you again, and I want to talk more optimism, okay? Because in your Trends Journal, what I love about it's one of those really thorough reads, and I love your technology references. Can you speak a little bit about what you see in the next 5, 10, 20 years with regards to these cutting-edge technologies that are going to benefit the world? I mean, people got to realize we live in very, very exciting times overall, and we got to be, very appreciative of all the comfort and everything that we have that has to do with technology. And there are very smart people working on great stuff that will free people up from very, mundane type jobs. And I read in your journal some amazing points. Can you speak about them?
Yes. Before I go on, though, I want to go back to marijuana a little bit. This is going to be a huge industry, regardless of this jerk Sessions. And the reason I'm saying that is because Trump is about business. When they legalized gambling, bingo, there are Trump casinos. He also talks about states' rights and not having the federal government intervene. So I don't think there's going to be a threat from the federal government. And states are very desperate for money. And that's why you're going to see more states voting to legalize marijuana for both recreational and medical use. So we see this bigger than booze. We see it as a huge, huge industry that's going to create millions of jobs and bring tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions, bigger than booze at 400 billion, and when it settles out into taxes and everything else. So we're looking at a big industry that's just in its early stages. So we see a lot of opportunity. I want to really make that clear. Jerks like Sessions just get me off because the fake news media allows a moron to make those stupid kind of comments. So it's very positive, particularly in the medical field. Great breakthroughs are going to happen, and there's already science proving them. So now moving on to technology. Many things changing. Let's start with the driverless cars. We believe that there's positives and negatives to this, in the sense that there's hype and reality. We're seeing big companies buy out, they bought out that one in Israel, was it Intel or one of them for, God.
Intel bought Mobileye for about $15 billion just the other day.
Yeah. And so we don't see driverless cars right away. What we see are driverless vehicles in terms of if you're on a mining site, you're not going to need that truck driver to go from point A to point B. You need a truck driver on the highway from go to point A, point B, point C, point D. In other words, they're going to have locations where they're destined to go to with an alternate number of stops rather than daily commutes. Even though a daily commute has a point from A to B, it's a different trip. So we think buses, trucks are going to be the first wave. We don't see it hitting the mainstream in a heavy element probably until another 20 years from now.
Yeah, it's also important to say that this will cut delivery times for consumer goods, meaning Walmart, etc. They employ hundreds of truck drivers and they have to sleep, and driverless cars will not have to. So these are very good improvements to the economy. But obviously, the mainstream, as you say, this is not something that's going to happen real soon.
Yeah, we don't see that. And we think that a lot of these companies are over-investing. And it's very important to know the ones to invest in properly. Again, not to get caught up in a dot-com kind of bubble. And again, as I mentioned, we look at the globe, and our process is called globalnomic. So when we're talking about new technologies and new advancements, we're looking, of course, at alternative energies. And we write about those as well. And what we're also saying is put the picture together. So you're going to see new energies, and they're developing all over the world, whether it's solar, wind, geothermal, biofuel, but also bigger breakthroughs than that as well. So now what we're doing is we're preparing for the end of the fossil fuel age. And it's starting to wind down. So there's devices called sun cells. And they claim to yield power of thousands of suns contained in a small device. So I'm mentioning this because let's take a geopolitical and globalnomic viewpoint. Take a look at oil prices. They went from about $115 a barrel in June of 2014 to around $50 a barrel now. You take a country like Saudi Arabia, they need $100 a barrel to break even on their government. What does it mean? It means there's too much supply and not enough demand, and these fossils are eating in the new energies are eating into the profits of big oil. All right, so what's going to happen is that it's not only too much supply and not enough demand eating away at oil, it's all these alternatives. And the more alternatives that come online, the less fossil fuels, natural gas, coal are going to be needed. And so here you have in the States where Trump is talking about bringing back the coal industry. Why? It's going in the wrong direction. So the fossil fuels had their place in time. Once upon a time, there used to be an Iceman before refrigeration. Once upon a time, there were horse and buggies before automobiles. Once upon a time, we needed fossil fuels. We're not going to need them anymore. We're looking at breakthroughs that are going to be as big as the invention of fire, or the discovery of fire and the invention of the wheel. And that's going to happen with fossil fuels, going the way, as I said, of other antiquities. And when that happens, geopolitical interests also change. Do you think the United States would have invaded, as I say, Libya and Iraq if their major export was broccoli? So that's how we're looking at this.
Gerald Celente, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting interview. And where can people check out more of your work? I mean, I'm looking at the Winter Trends Journal. It is absolutely, it's like a book. It's amazing. And where can people check out your work? Can you plug us in?
Yes, trendsresearch.com, trendsresearch.com. And also we have a conference coming up in Ireland, in Galway. If you go to our website, trendsresearch.com, and you go to conferences. But we just don't only do the Trends Journal. We do Trends in the News broadcasts each weekday night. We have a Trends Monthly. A new one will be coming out this week. We do Trend Alerts each week. And, of course, the Trends Journal. And we really believe it's the only magazine and information that will provide you with history before it happens, and at a very reasonable price, 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you can't afford the full price, which is only $99 a year for the digital issue and all of the other things that I mentioned, of course the conferences are separate, we have a discount request page for people having a difficult time, because we try to help everybody prepare for the future. avoid the dangers, and seize the opportunities.
Gerald Celente, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gerald Celente is a man who doesn't pull any punches. Trend forecasting is incredibly intense work. It revolves around digesting enormous amounts of data and coming to conclusions. And this isn't easy at all. And Gerald has built a career out of doing this. Firstly, we talked with Gerald about one of the biggest trends and financial opportunities out there, the legalization of cannabis. This is an industry that is just getting started, and you should be very careful when picking companies and investment in this because it's very volatile. And I wrote an important report on this at wealthresearchgroup.com/cannabis profits. And we also covered the Trump elections with Gerald and the fact that reality and aspirations might be different for this presidency. Trump is proposing tax cuts and deregulations and focusing on infrastructure. But the domestic market is responding well to this. But the inherited colossal debt that Trump has to deal with could be a huge challenge for his aspirations. Please watch our micro documentary on the debt ceiling mass called June 1st, Deep State to Overthrow Trump. Just to understand the how fragile the American system is at this point, with Washington being so polarized. Also, go to wealthresearchgroup.com/June 1st for a 5-step action plan in case turmoil begins, and wealthresearchgroup.com/safe havens for a powerful combination portfolio of asset protection that includes many things that are outside what people normally do. Lastly, if you read the Trends Journal, this winter edition from Gerald Celente, you'll see many amazing breakthrough technologies that are being advanced and radicalized and could improve our lives in a big way. Right now, our team is researching such companies to profile for members of our free newsletter. For comprehensive research of the cutting-edge technology sector, go to wealthresearchgroup.com/future profits, and stay tuned next week as I have a big interview with Mr. Jim Rickards.